Now, a number of Democrats, 45 of the 48 Democratic senators, have set some conditions to working with the Republicans on this. For one thing, they do not want to see any tax cuts for the top 1%. They don't want any reconciliation. They don't want this to be a deficit finance series of cuts. So Democratic strategist Kritzy Setzer on that, political analyst Carrie Sheffield, market watcher Scott Martin. I noticed, Scott, that 3 Democrats were not among those signees. Joe Manchin of West Virginia, Heidi Heitkamp of North Dakota, Joe Donnelly of Indiana, all states and all senators who are up for re-election next year in states that Donald Trump won last year. So they're going to be cautious.
Yeah, politics much, Neil. You know what's interesting about this? Remember back in the day, and it feels like so far long ago, when this was going to be this phenomenal tax reform that Donald Trump was going to come out with. And gosh, man, it just, even after you talking to Steve Mnuchin there, it feels like a whimper, doesn't it? It feels like it's going to be some brackets. It feels like it may not be on the corporate side, or at least maybe just on the personal side. They're not going to let some of these companies that are sitting with, say, $3+ trillion overseas repatriate those earnings back at a favorable rate, so they won't stay overseas. I mean, goodness gracious, you know, regardless of what happens in the Senate, you probably do have some better cooperation in the House. But the outlook for this, if it doesn't happen by, say, October, November, is off the table for me for 2018 because midterms are going to take over.
You know, Gary, you could read into this, these 3 Democratic holdouts, that those are 3 potential pickup votes for Republicans. So they could afford to lose a couple of Republicans, just like they did on health care, and still get this thing done. What do you make of that?
Well, I would have loved to see that happen on healthcare, and it didn't happen. Maybe this, yes, could be the opening with regards to tax reform. And even with 2018, so even if Mitch McConnell, and to be honest, I'm very disappointed in what happened with Mitch McConnell. I mean, he was the one, his rhetoric was just so childish when it came to Barack Obama and saying, my goal is to make you a one-term president. That didn't happen. So put your money where your mouth is. You had 8 years to get a plan together to stop Obamacare, and you couldn't get that together. You know, but nobody is irredeemable. Mitch McConnell, you can do this. Mitch McConnell, you can pick over a few. You know, this is what happened with Bill Clinton and the Republican Congress when it came to healthcare or welfare reform. We did see historic welfare reform with the parties working together. I would love to see that. I'm not holding my breath. And to be honest, in 2018, the Democrats have a lot more ground to protect within the Senate. There are 24
right. No, you're right about that.
Democrats who are in Republican Trump-won states.
You know, Christy, though, looking at beyond the political math, I'm looking at the market math. And I think at least part of this is built on optimism. At least corporate tax cuts will get done. The individual rate thing might be a battle, to Scott's earlier point. And yet Democrats are in alignment with Republicans on that corporate tax relief. Maybe not going as low as 15% from the 35% top right now, but going lower, a lot lower. Do you see that being the common ground?
Look, I think that it's Republicans, and particularly Mitch McConnell's first, second, and third instinct to try to just go it alone and not worry about where they can get Democratic support. And, you know, look, I think that you mentioned, you know, people like Joe Donnelly being potential pickoff votes. I think that could be true if they're not so offended by the process that initially alienates Democrats, right? So I think what you're first going to have to see is Republicans making a genuine and good faith effort to put forth proposals that Democrats can agree with. And then actually putting forth a good faith effort to bring them to the table.
But Christy,
you know,
what did you read that with these 3 senators, Democratic senators, not signing this letter when 45 other your colleagues are kind of arm twisting to do so, and they don't? That was interesting.
No, I think you're right. I think you're right. I think what they're saying is, listen, we're open to negotiation here. We're open to hearing what you guys have to say. But there's still, you know, work for Republicans to do here.
Doesn't it appear that the Democrats are going to find a way to put Christie's words back in here, Neil, to find a way to be offended by the process? I mean, this was something that was supposed to be a bipartisan agreement when we all got together after the inauguration. And then it was like, well, this isn't going to be revenue neutral. It's going to add to the deficit for a few years. So therefore, we can't do it. Yet we're going to completely ignore the fact that the income earners, the high income earners, the small business owners, the job creators, the spenders in this economy need the tax break to help get this economy going, because we're still, what, sub 3% growth for
right. Well,
year.
and I also have to bring in.
Nobody gets that.
I also have to bring in the defense. The Democrats are so anti-defense. And when you talk about what happened with the spending cap, so Senator Tom Cotton did an op-ed in the Wall Street Journal pointing this out. The sequestration budget cuts to defense. Defense is only about 16% of the budget spend, but it was 50% of the sequestration cuts. That's a disproportionate, basically, anti-defense approach, and that's what the Democrats, I'm worried, that are going to be happening.
I think we'll get tax cuts. I do. I think that hook or crook, they're going to get them. I don't think they'll be as big or as broad-based, but I think, Scott, the markets will be kind of okay with that. What do you think?
I hope so, Neil. I mean, from your lips to the stock market's ears. I mean, the lucky thing is...
Well, you won't get a
the
tax
S&P
cut, Scott. You're not getting one.
Well, I never have had one, so what does that tell you? Because I probably don't make enough money. But, the reality is this. The S&P 500 has done very well with earnings and revenue reports so far, and as long as that continues, that's good. But they need some help, and they're going to need more help in a couple of quarters. I promise you that.
So, Christy, the Trump rally in the market, which I'm sure you attribute to Donald Trump, will continue.
100%.
I thought so.
No, look, I mean, obviously I attribute to, enthusiasm and hopefulness that tax reform is going to get done. But we are in August, and the Congress has not a single solitary legislative victory. So I don't know. That's some awful hopefulness, without reason for it.
I disagree with that.
You didn't remember the Super Bowl. I thought that Atlanta was going to win the game the way.
Can we get Brady in Congress? Maybe he can do it.
That's the extent of my football knowledge there.
Well,
guys,
I think that the sanctions against Iran were a big legislative win, among other reasons. So, Democrats, I hope you just don't stick to your talking points about no victories.
No. Believe me,
We'll see.
Everyone has their talking points. Guys, I want to thank you very, very much. In the meantime.